Hi, I'm Femi OK. Today on the stream, we're looking at the fallout after the Capitol building riots in the United States, recent arrests of activists in Hong Kong, and vaccine hesitancy during a global pandemic. There is a lot going on in this show. If you have a comment, a question, you know what to do if you're on YouTube. Jump into the comment section and you too can be part of this discussion. We start in the United States where people are still talking about what happened on Wednesday in Washington, D.C.
Well, the events that took place here in Washington, D.C. at the Capitol building on January 6th may have been a surprise for some. For those of us that study terrorism and extremism, it unfortunately wasn't so much of a shock. We've seen strong polarization taking place here in the United States in the past number of years, which has fueled extreme views, including conspiracy theories, some of which have seeped into mainstream ideas as well as politics. This is something that moving forward needs to be addressed to help reunite the country again. With that being said, those involved in the events at the Capitol on Wednesday need to be held accountable to send a strong message that the democratic system cannot be disrupted by intimidation and violence.
We're joined now by Patty Culhane. She is now Jazeera English correspondent. Patty, you are getting together a better picture of what happened on Wednesday. What are you finding out?
Well, I just want to give you my perspective where I was on Wednesday first. Right now, I'm in the Russell Senate building. Before, on Wednesday, I was in the Cannon office building, and we were told that there was a bomb, possible bomb, and we had to get out. The police rushed us out the door, and my photographer and I got out the door just as the police locked it and kept people locked in for hours. And what we saw was just a veritable wall of people descending on the Capitol. And I stayed as far away as I could. I was still getting exposed to the wafting tear gas, so I was close enough to have that. But I obviously didn't want to go into the crowd because we know how they feel about the media, and they were attacking journalists left and right. So I was a bit of a distance away, but I saw the police trying to hold the protesters back and failing amazingly quickly. What we know now, as of videos today, piecing things together, it looks like there were about 4 people that kept members of Congress from being either held hostage or attacked or potentially killed by these rioters, these mob of people. In the House Speaker lobby, there were 3 cops that basically held people back as they were punching through the glass around them to try and get to the members of Congress who were looking for the only exit they could find still. And then on the Senate side, this mob rushes the stairs, and the only thing, there was one, happened to be African-American officer there, and if these people had turned to the right, they were yelling, "Where's the Senate? Where's the Senate?" If they had turned to the right, and you're watching this video now, they would have been able to walk into an unlocked chamber of the Senate. But you can see he sort of used himself as bait, and they followed him up to the next set of stairs, so they couldn't get into the Senate. So if you think about it, this was literally 4 people, and their actions in the course of 2 to 3 minutes made this be from a absolute astounding, shocking event to what could have easily been a tragedy.
Very quickly, the FBI put out seeking posters, like I want to say wanted posters. It's not exactly how they word it. So they were looking for these people who stormed into the Capitol building. You were there. You could see some of them. Can you explain what they were thinking, or what they were feeling, how they were reacting? Because the country is divided right now about whether it was a good thing, what happened on Wednesday, or whether it was a bad thing.
Okay, well, anyone who thinks it was a good thing is obviously just deranged, because the vision of democracy was attacked violently. A police officer was what appears to be beaten to death. So no, I don't think anyone can say there was anything positive that came out of this. I think there are going to be a lot of investigations. How to describe the mood of the crowd? It was a mixture, and I don't know how you mix these two together, between joy and anger. And what they saw is righteous anger. They were so unabashedly proud of themselves. They were cheering each other on. I'd read in college and graduate school about mob mentality. I don't think I'd ever actually seen it in person. It was like collective hate and passion came over these thousands of people. They were vile. They were angry. They said horrible things to us. Luckily, and I did have security, but luckily we weren't attacked, because the feeling, there was such gross incompetence among the security officials, that I truly felt at the time that if I looked wrong at one of these people and the mob turned on us, that nobody was coming to help. They felt so clearly that they were on the right side of history, when, in my opinion, it was so clear that they are, in fact, on the wrong side of it.
Let me bring in Mohammed Gula, who we spoke to earlier. He was really keen to find out and to make sure that there were consequences for what happened on Wednesday. Here he is, Patty.
Okay.
Anything less than impeachment and accountability towards those who stormed the Capitol, and honestly, those police officers who were complacent in allowing it, would be a breakdown of justice. There needs to be a recommitment from the Republicans to our shared democratic values, the values that make America what it is. Enough is enough. America needs healing. And the only way I see that happening is if we hold those who were involved accountable.
Patty,
So
what are you hearing? What are you seeing?
Yeah, to respond to that, the way I've described this to my friends and family is, what happened here at the Capitol is either the most incredible case of incompetence, or there's some sense of a conspiracy in here, because if there was a plan, I couldn't tell. The United States Capitol fell in a matter of minutes. I mean, it's shocking, and I've run out of all of the different words for it. As far as accountability for President Trump, this week I think the House of Representatives will take a vote, and they will have the simple majority to vote to impeach him. Then they're going to hold it for 100 days, so the Senate can get about doing the business of confirming Joe Biden's nominees for cabinet positions and other positions. And then what will happen is they'll once they hand that paperwork over to the Senate, there will be a trial. Now, Trump is going to argue you can't impeach a president who's no longer in office. There is legal precedent that says yes, you can. It was done before to the Secretary of War in the 1800s. So if he has the money and the lawyers, he could take it to the courts, try and buy time that way. We don't know which way the court's going to rule. But if they rule that he can, in fact, have an impeachment trial, then there is going to be a problem for him, because Republicans are no longer in charge of the Senate. Remember last time he was impeached, they said, we don't need to have any witnesses, even though it's never been done in the history of the country before to have an impeachment trial without witnesses. They don't have that option now, because Chuck Schumer will decide the process, and there are going to be witnesses. You see Republicans saying, if you do this, we can't heal the country. Democrats are saying, if we don't do this, we can't heal the country. But keep in mind, think about what might come out during the course of a trial. Republicans are on the record of standing with the president. If it turns out that it's worse than we think, their past support is still very obvious, and they have to run for re-election. As for the criminals who did this, they're already tracking them down. There's a lot of critique of the police that they didn't arrest them and really looked like they were escorting them out of the building after giving them a casual tour. Those police officers, the ones that you've seen on tape, they're going to be held to account. They're going to track down as many of these people as they can. They have more than 40,000 tips, and it's only, how many days has it been? I don't even know how many days it's been. I've been working so long.
Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. 4 days. 4 days.
4 days.
Yeah.
40,000 tips.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So they'll be tracked down. They'll be charged. And they'll go to prison.
Let me go to YouTube, because some thoughts that people want to bounce off you. So, Urshad Bag, America should learn a bitter lesson and must stop its interference in different countries' elections. There was a lot of shock and horror from overseas looking at what was happening on Wednesday. The Crew, impeachment will further divide the country. Terry Coleman, always a conspiracy. Come on, it was all about racism on Trump and his supporters' part, but Congress played a role in it also. This didn't just happen overnight, Patty.
No, and it didn't happen overnight. And anyone who said that they couldn't have seen this coming is absolutely, apparently they're the only people not on Twitter or reading newspapers. We knew that and this is what I meant by incompetence or conspiracy. Where was the National Guard? I mean, where was the plan? I mean, I reported during the day that there was a whole lot of Capitol Hill police officers. I mean, everywhere I looked, and checked my badge before I got anywhere near the complex. But then in retrospect, you look at the plan and it was to put bicycle racks a few, in a different places around the Capitol. In one of the spots I saw on social media, there were like 5 cops guarding it. And they knew thousands of people were going to come. So if it's incompetence, it's mind boggling. These are people who handle big events. And every part of the security plan was abysmal, was a failure. And so are you really that bad at your job? Or was there something else at play? I have no, obviously evidence, or I would be telling you about it. But I think that's what they're really going to be focusing on. They're going to try to get to the bottom of it. There's also a lot more we don't know about who these people are who did this. I mean, police are reporting that they found radios and two-way communications. They had flashbangs. They had weapons. And Jim Clyburn came out and said, look, there's one place in the Capitol that has my name on it. And that's by Statuary Hall, I believe. They were right there. They didn't go into that office. But he said they somehow knew to go to where I usually do my work, an unmarked location, and bang on the door and try and get my staff in there. So how did they know where Jim Clyburn's secret office was? And I mean, my bigger point is I've come to the Capitol a lot over my more than dozen years in Washington. I've literally never once not gotten lost. Yesterday, I got on the wrong train. I mean, the train's running under the building. And if you asked me to find the speaker's office, I'd have to ask 42 people before I found it. It's a maze-like structure in there. So there's just so much that doesn't add up.
Patty, I'm just looking at a post that you posted on Twitter the day after the Capitol building riots. And it's Capitol Police searching the grounds the day after the Capitol riots. New fence put up, much more robust police presence there today. Morgan Pratt asked the stream and puts out this idea about, so now what do you do about what happened? Now that there are people that feel that they can storm the Capitol building, now what? Here's Morgan.
Of course, the events of January 6th are very troubling, but I think we need to be really careful about how we respond. So far, the dominant narratives are we need a new domestic terrorism bill, or we need to increase the strength of Capitol Police, or we need to overcome this with unity or bipartisanship. And I think all three of those ideas are very dangerous. The last thing we need to do is increase domestic surveillance. These counterterrorism measures have been terrible historically, or over-police the already most policed metro area in the United States, or legitimize the idea of the same Republicans who've been encouraging this type of violence for the last 5 years.
Patty, just as a closing thought, as you're piecing together what happened on Wednesday, you're reporting up to Wednesday in the last 4 years, what would you say that politicians in the United States should be thinking about doing next?
I don't think you're going to see new domestic laws. I think you're going to see massive reform to the way the Capitol Police are handled. I mean, the top 3 law enforcement people have already been fired or resigned because they were going to be fired. You're seeing a much different Capitol today. People are very worried. Right-wing media has said it's not over. January 17th, we're going to storm the Capitol again, and all the capitals across the country. Now you see security fences up around the Capitol. You have thousands of National Guards troops, so it's soldiers patrolling the Capitol. That's unsustainable. I think the question is going to be, how does this pan out for Donald Trump? He has activated these right-wing groups that his downfall they see as a call to arms. If he's brought down, if he's charged with crimes, or it all depends on what Donald Trump does. Or does he get his own cable network and continue to stoke the flames of hate and bigotry? We don't know. But the most important thing I think is important, I want to leave you with this, is you can't fix a problem that you don't know exists. And many Americans have been blind to the fact that these right-wing extremists are a true, clear, and present danger to the country. And after the events of Wednesday, I don't think you can deny that for one more minute.
Patty Culhane, Al Jazeera English correspondent, thanks for joining us on the stream today.
My pleasure.
You're welcome. We go from the United States to Hong Kong, where activists recently have been rounded up by police. Amnesty International has something to say about that. Let's have a look.
The government of Hong Kong is delivering a masterclass in how to strip people of their rights to freedom of expression. This latest crackdown is the starkest sign yet of how the new national security law is being weaponized to end any form of dissent against the establishment. And one of the saddest things is the chilling effect that it's having on people's right to participate in public life. Some of those targeted include social workers who are merely trying to help people in their communities. But if there's one thing that we've seen, it's the resilience of the people of Hong Kong as their rights have been eroded so rapidly, and it's essential that the world stands with them.
Nathan Law joins the stream today. Nathan, it's good to have you. How would you like to describe yourself to our international audience?
I'm a former lawmaker in Hong Kong and an activist that campaigns for Hong Kong's democracy.
How would you explain these recent arrests that have been happening in Hong Kong? What is going on?
So on Wednesday, Hong Kong morning, more than 50 political figures, their homes are being raided and they were arrested under the national security law. And the reason why the government arrested them is because they have participated in a primary that helps the pro-democracy camp to get the majority in the legislature branch. And the government thinks that if they get into the legislature and they will veto and block the bills and budgets from the government, by doing so, they are constituting a subversive act. So these people, they're just trying to use their constitutional rights to hold the government accountable, but it is being branded a name of threatening the national security, and now they are facing maximum penalty of lifelong sentencing in the following court proceedings.
Nathan, I'm looking at a headline. This is an op-ed piece that you wrote just a few days ago. The world must do more to fight China's crackdown in Hong Kong. What is the more that you're asking the world to do, and what can they even do?
Well, for Hong Kong people and for activists campaigning for Hong Kong's democracy, we've been looking forward to a greater transatlantic or even global cooperation in terms of curbing China's authoritarian expansion. It is really clear that the deterioration of freedom in Hong Kong is just a sign of its expansion and that aggressiveness of its authoritarian nature. So for us, we are really looking forward to more sanctioning mechanism in place to China and Hong Kong's officials. And also we need to craft a policy that all the global leaders, democratic countries' leaders sit together and they navigate their ways to counter that. Otherwise, our democratic values will be heavily damaged, and all the infiltration and all the attacks on democracy from these authoritarian regimes will continue to rise.
Nathan, I'm really intrigued by your reaction to the spokesperson for the Foreign Ministry in China. Have a listen to this.
We urge the U.S. to stop interfering in China's internal affairs, harming China's interests and undermining China-U.S. relations. China will take all necessary measures to firmly safeguard its sovereignty and security interests, and the U.S. will pay a heavy price for its wrongdoings.
Nathan.
Well, it's not about damaging sovereignty or interfering in internal affairs. It is about how we could safeguard democracy and democratic values that we all share. We are seeing like 50 figures, they are arrested and they're put on trial because they wanted to exercise their constitutional rights. And it is an utter attack on our system and the value that we all share for our global audience and people in the US and in the UK and in elsewhere. So I think for now, autocracy and authoritarian regime, they're threatening global democracy, and defending the Hong Kong is part of the project of preserving your own democracy when they face the threat of the Chinese Communist regime.
Nathan Law, thank you very much for joining the stream today. We really appreciate your perspective. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And finally, while all of these big news stories are happening, we cannot forget that we're in the middle of a global pandemic. There are vaccines available for some people in some parts of the world, but some people do not want to take them. This is vaccine hesitancy. Take a look. Have a listen.
Vaccine hesitancy is when people have questions about vaccines. They want to know, is it safe? Does it work? Do I really need it? A lot of people have these questions, and when they start to look online or talk to their friends, they get a lot of confusing information. But we need to build confidence in vaccines because we all need vaccines, and the only way we're going to stop the virus is if you take it, if I take it, and everyone we know is ready to take it. We need to protect the world.
Dr. Blackstock, it's so good to have you here. Introduce yourself to our international audience. Tell them what you do.
Hi, everyone. I am a Yahoo News medical contributor, and I'm also the founder of an organization that deals with racial health inequities.
We are assuming that there is vaccine hesitancy already, Doctor. Have you seen that? Is it a problem yet?
Yes, it's absolutely a problem. Even here in New York City, we have about 30% of our healthcare workers that have declined a vaccine. So these are people who have seen patients with COVID, have cared for dying patients, and still are refusing the vaccine. One other trend that we're seeing is that there are certain communities where there are higher rates of vaccine hesitancy. And one community in particular is that among Black Americans that have the most highest levels of vaccine hesitancy for certain reasons.
Mm-hmm. I'm just looking here at a report from the World Health Organization. They know that vaccine hesitancy is an issue, and this is how they characterize it. You're sitting in your armchair, you're reading your newspaper, there is a train about to come, but you're not anticipating what that impact might be. You said there were a variety of reasons why some people wouldn't want to take a vaccine. If you could boil that down, what would you say it was from the circle that you are working in?
Well, I will say that in the circle that I'm working in, there are several reasons. One, especially in Black communities, we're seeing that there's a history here in the U.S., a horrific history of medical experimentation, such as the Tuskegee syphilis study, where people were actually experimented on by the U.S. government. But also, there are groups of people of color here in the U.S. who experience ongoing discrimination when they seek out healthcare. And then I think also we saw an unprecedented level of political interference this year in the work of our FDA and our CDC, our primary public health organizations and the organizations that are responsible for vaccine manufacturing and distribution. And so I think a lot of those are some of the reasons why we're seeing these high rates of vaccine hesitancy that really need to be combated through expansive public health campaigns that dispel a lot of the misinformation that's out there.
I'm just looking at this Pew study. So it's a journalist group that look and do surveys, and they surveyed Americans, a proportion of Americans. 62% are uncomfortable about being one of the first groups of people to get a vaccine. What have you seen in terms of the campaigns out there, the persuasion out there in order to make people feel more comfortable?
You know, to be honest, I haven't seen much, and this is where we're running into a significant problem. The vaccine was developed very quickly by all appearances, and people have concerns about that. I think those concerns are just, and we are months behind an extensive public health campaign. We really should be seeing advertisements and information being conveyed in a culturally responsive way on social media, on buses, on trains, on television, and we still are not seeing that. And so I think part of the problem that we have is that our state and local public health departments don't have the resources and the funding to get that job done, to get that campaign done. And we really need to get it out there, because if people are not willing to take the vaccine, that will just prolong this pandemic, and no one wants that.
There's something that leapt out at me, Doctor, from your Twitter feed, and it's this week reconfirmed for me that regardless of leadership, we still may have had the most COVID-19 deaths, maybe not as many, but still the highest. We've gone full circle from the story we started with to the story that we've ended with. What do you think the next 6 months is going to look like for COVID-19 in the United States? Just very quickly, Doctor, wrap us up.
I think the next 6 months are going to be our toughest months possible, as we are experiencing a surge, but we're having a trickling out of our vaccines. We're going to need federal, state, and local leadership to put restrictions in place to keep our public safe, and we're going to need buy-in from the American public as well.
Dr. Uche Blackstock, thank you for talking to us about vaccine hesitancy in the United States. Nathan Law also joined us earlier to talk about the arrests of activists in Hong Kong. And we started our show with Paddy Culhane, Al Jazeera correspondent, talking about the fallout from the Capitol building riots. And thank you, YouTubers, for being part of today's discussion. I'm Femi Oke, signing off from the Home Edition Stream Studio. See you next time.